Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the X Factor players for all of the teams in the CFP. Probably we'll go back to that with an X Factor just for the team overall, whether it's the pass game or the pass rush or a lot of the different things. Thought about doing that today, but narrowed it in a little bit more. Maybe I'll broaden it out a little bit more next week. So stay tuned for that. But let's get into some transfer portal updates because the commitments started rolling in. I didn't think I was going to be doing one of these segments today, but then commitments just kept rolling in. I wanted to make sure you guys have all of the updates that you possibly need. We'll roll through this pretty quickly, if I had to imagine, because this is a lot of different players to get through. And we'll start with Hunter Zambrano, the most talented offensive lineman that was in the portal at the time. Interior offensive lineman, really good player from Illinois State. He is making his way down to Lubbock, Texas. He will be a Red Raider next year. He only allowed 7 sacks this year. Very talented kid. Definitely a guy that could be an immediate starter for them. And then you got to figure out the rest of it. Still a lot of offensive line issues for Texas Tech, but this is a big-time step in the right direction. No doubt about that. And it didn't stop there. They kept going down to the FCS level for Cole Wisnowski, very talented player from NDSU, has played so much football, is going to be a huge piece to that defense just to get everyone in place on that back end and possibly be a big-time leader for this team. He is going to be an immediate starter. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't. Very talented player that can play this game very, very instinctually, and I think he'll be a huge piece for that Red Raiders defense in 2025. Jacob Zeno, the quarterback from UAB, has committed to Texas A&M. He is going to be probably a supplemental piece, probably a depth piece behind Marcel Reed, but at the end of the day, I do think Jacob Zeno is a very talented player, so if you are going to get a supplemental piece, if you are going to get a backup piece for Marcel Reed, it's a pretty good one to get. He definitely does fit into what Colin Klein likes to do offensively, a little bit more of a runner than someone like Connor Wegman was, and I have to assume they have one more in the chamber. I think they're probably going to go out and get one more, losing Jalen Henderson as well as Connor Wegman, but we'll see what happens there. Definitely a good time pickup to just be a backup in case of emergency for a guy like Marcel Reed. Then we have the guy that everyone was watching for, Williams Nwaneri, very, very talented player, an absolute beast, number one recruit in the country coming out last year. He committed to Missouri. He is now committed to Nebraska. He went into the portal and he went in with one of those non-contact tags, which means he's found his place. He's going somewhere very, very specific. That place was Nebraska. Huge pickup for the Huskers. Honestly, out of the guys that they just lost, and this guy, he's the most talented of the group. Might not be the most experienced of the group, but from a pure talent perspective, he is absolutely a talent upgrade over a guy like Prince William Mielen or a couple of the other guys they lost. Now, you lost a number of guys, so you still got replacing to do, no doubt about that, but you're in a position where Nebraska, you got a really, really good prize here, no doubt. Deshaun Womack, another edge rusher that came off the board yesterday, he is going to be an Ole Miss Rebel and never really caught on over there at LSU. Very talented player, definitely a guy that felt like halfway through the year, it felt like things were starting to kind of click, never really got where he wanted it to. He is going to be in Oxford, and it feels like another time where Ole Miss is just heating up. It's going to be a lot more people. I know they're in for Parker Kutas, the very talented offensive lineman from Arkansas. They're in for a lot of guys. And obviously, Ole Miss will be a team we talk about plenty around this segment, no doubt about that. Some other news, Sadir Mitchell. I reported yesterday that it seemed like he was going into the portal. Sounds like he's going to stick around. Sounds like he will be a Texas Longhorn in 2025. According to Horns 247, he has decided to stick around. Huge for the Texas program. They were really losing guys on that defensive line, and being able to keep this guy around that, frankly, I think is going to be probably the best defensive lineman they have next year. Absolutely huge. And still some work to do in the portal, but this is one that they badly wanted to keep on campus, and it looks like they're going to be able to. PJ Woodland is another one that a lot of people seem to have gotten wrong. He actually quote tweeted Pete Thamel when he released the news and said that is not true at all. He is sticking around LSU, which is huge. He is a guy that I frankly think can be an All-American in the future. He could be an All-American next year. He is so talented on the back end of that defense for LSU, and keeping him intact is absolutely huge. And we'll stick with LSU. He might be going up against this guy in practice here in a bit because Barian Brown seems to be heading very, very close to committing to Baton Rouge. And if he does, the ability for Garrett Nussmeier to push the ball downfield to this kid, it's going to be special to watch. I can almost promise you that. There's a very, very talented player that just wasn't in the right offense for the last couple of years. He is now, in my opinion, would be in the right offense at LSU. It would be so much fun to watch him in that. Another guy, Eric Singleton, the top transfer on the market right now. It looks like Georgia's starting to wane just a little bit in this one. Obviously, Georgia will have plenty to say towards the end of this, but Ole Miss and Auburn seem to be the ones kind of pulling away, Ole Miss especially. So something to watch there. I think he could be a huge piece to kind of replace someone like Jordan Watkins or really just become the guy. He is an absolute beast, and wherever he ends up, I think he's going to be a star. I think he could be first team All SEC next year. That's how good this kid is, and that's how much of a difference I think he can make in an offense like Ole Miss especially. Nick Anderson is out there as well, and LSU and A&M seem to be the teams to watch right now. Would be a huge addition to that LSU offense with Aaron Anderson. A&M just needs guys. A&M is going out there trying to get as many guys as they can. They are leading for Micah Hudson right now. That would be a huge piece to add to a guy like Jerome Miles that came in as a freshman. And then you got Nick Anderson. That would be a huge piece as well. So A&M's going to be active. They're going to be in for a lot of these wide receivers. If they're able to lock down a couple of them, then it could be a very fun attack. I don't necessarily know what they're going to change about the scheme around there to get a little bit more of that passing attack involved, but at the end of the day, you got the wide receivers to do it. That's for sure. Kevin Coleman was one that went in the portal yesterday, and a lot of Mississippi State fans were very, very upset about this one because this is an absolute beast, and it looks like he might just have his place picked out in Missouri. It sounds like Missouri might just be winning out for this one. Very talented player, one of those guys that can totally change the way that you go about business offensively, huge after the catch, and definitely will be a huge asset for probably Missouri, but whichever team he ends up on, he will be a huge asset for them. Max Clare is a guy you're going to want to watch. The number one tight end in the portal right now. He is on his way to Austin, Texas, and they badly need a little bit of help at that tight end position with Gunnar Helm walking out the door. This would be the perfect replacement for Gunnar Helm. I don't think Steve Sarkisian's letting him leave without a commitment. I'll be totally honest with you. I think they're going to do everything in their power to make sure this guy is committed by Sunday, and I think Texas probably has the inside track here. I haven't seen any other visits set or anything like that, so I would lean towards Texas really, really keying in on this one this weekend and hopefully locking down this one and getting a replacement for Gunnar Helm for 2025. Fernando Mendoza is the name you're going to want to watch. He is a very talented player and a guy that a lot of people around the industry have said he is an NFL quarterback. He has that upside, he has that ability, and it looks like there's 4 teams to watch here. Georgia, Indiana, UCLA, and Wisconsin. Would be fascinating if he found his way to Georgia because, frankly, I think the kid could start. It would all depend on what happens with Gunnar Stockton over the next little bit, but at the end of the day, he's a very talented player. Obviously, Wisconsin and UCLA, that would be very beneficial for them. I think he'd fit in Indiana. Wouldn't quite fit that offense as much as you would like, but very talented player nonetheless. I think wherever he ends up, he will likely be the immediate starter, and I think this kid's a star. I think he has every ability to take a big-time step forward next year and become one of the big-time starters in college football. Jackson Arnold is still out there, and it's still the same 2 teams. It's Mississippi State and Auburn. Looks like Auburn's given a little bit more of a run than some people assume they would, at least initially. Going to be interesting to see what they can do, and you have him with some of the deep threats that they have. Could be very dangerous. He doesn't quite fit perfectly in that Hugh Freeze offense, and there'll be a couple other quarterbacks that'll probably fit a little bit better, but this is a very talented kid. Definitely a kid that can open up that offense, and if you have him throwing to Cam Coleman, a lot of really nice things can happen. I can promise you that. And we were talking about with Jackson Arnold, Mississippi State being involved as well. If that does fall through and he does find his way to Auburn, Luke Kromenhoek could be the decision for Mississippi State. They've gotten his attention pretty quickly here, and this would be huge, not only for 2025, but for beyond, and I think that's the way that Mississippi State should be looking at this. I think they should be saying maybe 2025 is not going to be the perfect year for us. If we have a quarterback that we can continue to develop, continue to get better, it's going to be a huge year. It's going to be a year that we can really remember, and then we move forward to 2026, and then we might just have a dude. So I would lean into this one if I was Mississippi State. I would definitely go after this kid, and I think this kid has all the talent in the world. I think he could be a star there if you were able to lock him up this time around. Moving over to Arizona, they got hit in the back end of their defense the last couple of days. Tacario Davis as well as Dalton Johnson are finding their way into the portal, and a lot of different teams to watch here, but Texas is going to be the main one you're going to want to start with. Johnny Nansen, the former defensive coordinator for Arizona, is now the linebacker coach at Texas, and he's going to be in this recruitment. I can almost promise you that. Tacario Davis kind of flirted with the portal last time around, but pulled his name out. I'd be surprised if he did that this time around, and frankly, I'd be a little bit surprised if he didn't end up in Austin, if I'm being totally honest. A lot of those Arizona players that have found their way into the portal either last year or this time around are looking that direction. This is definitely a guy that Texas very badly needs. I would expect them to go pretty much as aggressively as they possibly can to get this kid, and then probably Dalton Johnson as well. Very talented back-end players, and they got a couple of players walking out the door over there in Austin. I would not be surprised at all if Johnny Nansen was on the phone with them right now, frankly. And then also on the back end, Mansour Deline is a very talented player on the back end for Virginia Tech. We'll talk about them here in a second, but Virginia Tech is a team that has had a really tough time in the portal. This is probably the toughest loss they've had. This is an absolute difference maker on that back end, and whoever is able to pick him up with a lot of different people needing some back end players, he's going to be an immediate starter. He is that good. He is an elite player, and definitely a guy that if he ends up in the SEC and the Big Ten, I don't know, but he's going to be a big-time player just about right away for whatever team he ends up on. And then Dabo Swinney has joined the party. It sounds like Clemson is actually hosting someone for a visit. Will Hite, a very talented edge rusher from Purdue this weekend. This is a guy that definitely they're going to want to lock up if they can get him on campus, especially with TJ Parker coming back for his junior year. Ooh, buddy. It could be a really, really fun pass attack for Clemson, and it gives you an idea that we're getting closer to Clemson starting to really dip their toe into this thing and get active. They're going to have to get really active here pretty soon because they're going to have a lot of players going off into the NFL, have some talent at wide receiver, but probably need to fill that out a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see how all this unfolds. And then their counterpart in the ACC, UNC, has already started doing work. A couple of different guys have scheduled some visits, and that thing will heat up very quickly over the weekend. Now let's get into some losers of the portal thus far, and it starts with Oklahoma. They are bleeding right now. They've lost 6 wide receivers to this point. They've lost their top tight end in Bauer Sharp. They've lost a number of offensive linemen and Jackson Arnold. It's all over the place over there in Norman, and they got a lot of work to do. Now, they're more than capable of doing that. They're a very talented coaching staff. They have everything going for them, but I can't imagine this was the plan going into the portal cycle to lose pretty much your top 6 wide receivers. Deion Burks is still there, but he might just be the only guy there. It might just be the Fresh Prince meme in that wide receiver room right about now, if I'm being honest. Then you do have LSU. They've lost a good amount of guys to the portal, particularly on the back end and the D-line. Lost Sage Ryan yesterday, lost JVR Suggs yesterday. So a lot of different things that they're going to have to figure out. I tend to believe that they're going to be more than fine, and some of this is going to be addition by subtraction, if I'm being totally honest. But Jakeem Jackson coming into the fray would be huge. Barian Brown obviously being a piece of this is going to be massive, but a lot of different moving parts. I think LSU is going to be fine in this grand scheme of things. USC, I can't say the same about. I don't know what's happening over there. They have a lot of different guys that are finding different places to play, including Deuce Robinson, Kyron Hudson, Quentin Joyner, obviously Miller Moss, and a lot of other guys on the defensive side of the ball. So, I don't know. It's going to do or die year for Lincoln Riley over there in LA, and he's got to deliver very quickly. Kentucky has really gotten hit. They're losing just about everything in the portal. Some guys are going off to the NFL draft like Deone Walker and Maxwell Harrison, and then Barian Brown, Dane Key, Keyshawn Silver, all of these guys are walking out the door to the portal. You got some problems if you're Mark Stoops in a big-time way for 2025. And then Virginia Tech, they've been hit very, very hard over the last little bit, and they got some guys they have to figure out. They obviously had Mansour Deline hit the portal, but then big-time offensive linemen have hit the portal from this program, and a lot of stuff to figure out. After a relatively disappointing year for Virginia Tech, they're going to have to do a little bit of resetting before they can attack 2025. And it's going to be crazy. The transfer portal, I had to make sure you guys were updated going into this weekend because this weekend's going to be fast and furious. We're going to have a lot of different commitments. We're going to have a lot of different moving parts, and we'll probably have a better idea of what UNC looks like around this time on Monday. But let's take our last break here. When we come back, we got to just get into a little bit of a weekend roundup. We'll get into Dan Mullen to USC, Tino Sunseri going over to UCLA, NIU possibly to the Mountain West, and a lot of other things that we'll break down right after this, so stick with us.